Okay. Yeah. So welcome everyone. All of you who have, we have a fairly small group, but you've taken the time to get up early on a Sunday morning and join this conversation. So thank you for that. So I think, what I would like to start off with, and I'll keep pausing in the middle so that you guys can comment and see if what I'm saying makes sense. Have you understood it, etc. Okay. So, so the first thing I want to start is with something called first principles thinking, right? So for those of you who follow Elon Musk, you may have heard him use this term, first principles thinking, a lot, right? So when we are trying to solve some big problem or some big thing, it's good to start from first principles. So here, what is it that we are trying to do, right? So we are trying to make a better world, correct? So if we want to make a better world, we can think, what is it that stops the world from being better, right? So if you're applying first principles thinking, so one of the thoughts that came to me is that if we want the world to be better, one of the things that we need is we need to have better leaders, right? We need to be able to elect better leaders. Okay. So if there's anyone who doesn't agree with this first principle, there'll be more, but this particular principle and to make the world better, then I'd love to hear from them. But otherwise, I'll move on. So if there's anyone, just unmute yourself and speak. But if you're in agreement with this, then we'll move on. And since this is being recorded, these first principles will be there, and hopefully they will become the sort of guiding principles of what is it that we are trying to do. Okay, so I'll pause for about 30 seconds or so, just in case we need to discuss this one principle, that if the world is going to become better, then we need to elect better leaders. And this is not only in India. So I just want to keep this whole perspective that while we may have the first few instances of the use of this Gpos software in India, but it could be anywhere in the world. So what we are designing is for actually global usage. Okay. Okay. So that's the thing that we are talking about, making the world better, not only making India better. Right? Okay. So that's kind of understood. Okay. So now let's move on to the next thing. So if we want to elect better leaders, so besides better leaders, what we want also is that we, in my opinion, want to get good ideas which may be generated in any part of the world, may have been implemented in any part of the world, to be applied across the world. So you don't have to reinvent ideas, right? So if someone has got a solution for air pollution, right, then maybe that solution can be adapted, etc., and used everywhere. And you don't need to reinvent it. Okay. So the other thing that you need for a better world is a better propagation of ideas. Okay. So for instance, now there may be some young guy who's very brilliant, has no PhD, no this thing, standing. Okay. But the person has some pretty good ideas. So he puts them out. Like you have Reddit or something where you can upvote stocks and things like that, right? Maybe you can upvote these ideas and maybe those ideas can get published and applied, right? So that is the second principle, that if you want a better world, right, you need some filtering mechanism for good ideas to bubble up, But this does not mean that, because there are thousands and thousands of, maybe millions of ideas which are rubbish, right? So this is not some grassroots thing, where anybody has some, this kind of idea and then you just put it. And, so the thing is that there has to be a reasonably high bar of how do you, and who sets that bar? Not some committee, right? But the people who join the platform, right? So you may have heard about Elon Musk trying to take over Twitter and talking about some open source algorithm, which will, decide what is good or bad in terms of free speech. So it's something like that, where, it's not some arbitrary. So ultimately, in my thinking, because I'm not Elon Musk, but, my thinking is that, okay, there'll be some mechanism where these ideas come. So people will want to submit ideas. That's the first thing. And then they will bubble up. And then there may be some kind of an editorial board which will look at how the ideas work with that person who came up with the idea to propagate it. Right? So the second principle for a better world is of faster velocity of propagation of great ideas. Right? Okay. So that's the second principle. So any comments so far, or are we all on the same page and are these all well understood? Okay. So if there are no comments, then I will move on to the third principle. Okay. So now the third principle is that you want some of the best minds in the world, okay, to work on solving what we call impact problems. So like removing material poverty is an impact problem, right? Removing poverty of the mind is an impact problem, right? There's so many people who are anxious, there are people who are depressed, there are people who are not optimistic about the future, and so on and so forth, right? So there is a fair amount of poverty of the mind. And then there is poverty of the body, right? So there is a lot of things that you can do in terms of preventive health, right? Especially a lot of you are young, right? Now, you may not be worrying about your health at this particular point in time. But if you do take preventive measures to keep healthy physically, whether it be yoga, pranayam, walking, having less sugar, whatever it is, that can pay off in the long run, right? On your mind, it may be things like reading the Bhagavad Gita or whatever, right? In terms of all this kind of stuff. So that is an important aspect of how do you get some of the best minds in the world, the best entrepreneurs in the world, to work on these impact problems. And if they solve these impact problems, they could build the trillion-dollar companies of the future. Now, this is not very well understood. How can you do a lot of good for the world? And how can you make a lot of money? Because most people, quite a few people, I won't say most people, but quite a few people believe that these two things are separate, right? You either make money or you do good. You can't do both, right? So quite a few people, and there is a lot of, thinking behind this for a lot of people. They believe that, people like entrepreneurs, corporates, etc., are evil, and people who run not-for-profits or NGOs and all are good, and the two cannot meet, right? Now, I have a very different view. I feel if you're going to do scalable good, right, then you need to attract the best talent. And the best talent will come if they can also make money and do good. So if they can have a meaningful life as well as make money, right? So this is a little controversial, but this to me is a principle. So how do you get the best minds in the world to work on impact problems? Like, so for instance, you have so many unicorns being formed in India, right? Now, I have not looked at all the unicorns and all this kind of stuff, but my feeling is that they are not necessarily solving impact problems, right? So if, say, for instance, Byju's or something like that solves uh, supplemental education kind of thing, tuitions and courses and all those kind of things, maybe it's fulfilling a need, but is it really solving an impact problem? Okay, or there's so many of these buy now, pay later startups, where they're sort of encouraging people to build EMI debt. Now, it might be a pretty good lucrative thing to do from a business standpoint, but is it really solving an impact problem, right? So this is another principle. So how do you get people to work on impact problems? Because solving these is hard, but the payoff, it can be very huge if you solve these impact problems, right? So that is another principle, right? Okay. So with these principles, while there may be a few more, but I think this is basically a good summary, right? Now we come to saying, okay, these are the principles. How do we move in that direction? Okay. So again, here I'll pause. Does anyone want to make any comments on what I've said so far?
Yes, sir. Actually, I have something to say related to your. So I've heard that for that impact problem things, like main issue is that how can we make money, that thing, that uh, revenue issue in that solving problem. So for example, some of the NGOs and all are solving problem, like in our Gujarat we have very good organization who are planting trees and all, but main source of income is the donation. They are not able to generate a revenue of that good cause. So how can we do that? Can you elaborate more on that topic?
Yeah. So I think that is a very good question. And let me elaborate that. And so if you see that people have been working to alleviate poverty for many years, right? So the World Bank has a group called CGAP, which is a consultative group to alleviate poverty or something. Then MIT has something called JPAL, which is a Joint Poverty Action Lab. And there have been lots of things, like Mohammed Yunus won the Nobel Prize for microfinance. So there have been many efforts to kind of alleviate poverty, but a lot of them seem to be donor-based, right? Like where you feel, okay, these people are doing a good thing, so you want to help a poor family in Odisha or something. Then if you're rich, why don't you donate some money? And then all that. Now, what I want to question, and this is the disruption, okay? And with any disruptive idea, like say, for instance, Elon Musk said, like, if I want to make space travel commercial, then I have to solve the reusability problem. How do I make rockets reusable, right? And people said, yeah, you're crazy. How can rockets be reusable? Blah, 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 whatever, right? So I'm also a little crazy, So what I'm basically saying is that I don't think you need donations. You can build a revenue model, and so we will talk about the revenue model for GPAL. So the first thing is that we are not building GPAL, right? In this group, we are building Gpos. Okay. which is a software which anyone who wants to set up a GPL can use, right? But the thing is that if we build the software and there is no revenue model, or there is, maybe it would be a donation model also, that's okay. But there has to be some users for the software, right? Because if there are no users for the software, then all the stuff that we do will be useless. Now, we have no guarantee that that will happen, right? But if we have a belief that that will happen, then it's worth putting in the effort to build it. And we'll also talk about, and if I forget, remind me as we go along, is why should people like you who are associated with this effort and you're not being paid, okay, why should you spend time on this? What is in there for you, right? Is there something that you can benefit, right? So what I'm saying is that I'm more a believer that people do things which have some benefit for them, right? And while this may not be the only way, if you can find a way where everybody benefits, everybody wins, then you're doing this because you feel that you want a better world, right? Now, you can also argue that, okay, suppose I'm rich, right? For me, the world is better, right? Like, why should I bother about a better world? Right? I have enough money, I'm like, in good shape, whatever. Why should I bother, right? But if you take a little bit more of a far-sighted view, right? When whoever you are, you're going to die someday, right? You can't take your money with you. So if you helped the world become a little better, maybe that's a good thing. And maybe, you won't get COVID, or you won't get like dengue or something, because there was a film producer called Yash Chopra, who was quite rich, who died from dengue, which is a sanitation-related disease, right? So even if you're very rich, you can't insulate yourself from the rest of the world totally. So there are some very strong reasons why everyone may want a better world. And then there are some very strong reasons why some people may not want a better world, right? Because like it took a civil war to end slavery in USA, right? Now, let's say, suppose everybody has fair amount of material prosperity, etc. Reasonable. Okay, they know their rights. They're not going to be abused and stuff like that. Now, what is going to happen to domestic servants in India? So I don't know, maybe some of you are quite young, maybe you're not married, whatever it is. But, if you ask your wives or whatever, saying, your domestic servant, now you'll have to pay, maybe 1.5 times or twice. If we make this world better, right? Then they're going to say, what? Are you kidding me? I don't want to pay, right? So it's not an easy problem, okay? All I'm trying to say is that there are competing forces, there are lots of things. So we should not kid ourselves that this problem is easy, right? But to me, it's a very cool problem, right? So I want to explain why I think this is a cool problem, right? Because one, it's a very difficult problem, right? When you're trying to say, I'm going to make the world prosperous and everybody in the world prosperous, right? Then people will say, ye to pagal hai, kuch nahi hona, right? Most of the things, right? So, but the thing is, I'm also not kidding myself that this will happen very soon or whatever. But I think if there is more thinking in this direction, then we will move closer to that goal, right? And if you are a student of the Vedas, for instance, then according to the Vedas, we are currently living in Kali Yuga. But the next Yuga, whoever no one knows when that yuga will start, but it's supposed to be the age of prosperity or Kriti Yuga, something like that. Okay. And of course, the world may end before that, but unlikely, according to the Vedas. The end of the world is still pretty far away. Okay. So the stuff is that this may take very long, but the little bit of effort, if we put in effort and we have fun doing it, and we get a benefit, then why not do it? Right? So that is the thought behind this. Okay. So any comments so far? Yeah. Hi.
Here. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Good morning, sir. So I'm joining this call for the first time, and it was great hearing you and Balkrishna. So I read the document, and I have a point to make is I don't see any government involvement here, because when you talk about social impact model or these kind of models to really become a success, a lot of times we depend on the government intervention at the local level as well, right? And although it's a software based solution, I understand, but a lot of time when it comes to implementation, we need the government support. So um, why have the government angle not been taken, or is that something we are still following? So I was just curious about it.
Sure. So that's again a very good question. So the thing is here, what we are trying to do is we are trying to build a software. And so if you look at, has this ever been done in the past? Right? So to my knowledge, and in fact, I think I used this software in one of the startups that I did, maybe in 2006. So 15, 16 years ago. So there was a software called MyFOS, okay, which was meant for microfinance. And we took that, it was an open source software. We adapted it. And then we used it for a startup called Echo India Financial Services, which still exists, which was trying to serve the unbanked community and all that. So what we are trying to do is we are just trying to build a piece of open source software which can be used in any part of the world, right? So any government, anywhere in the world, so we'll talk about who are the potential users of this, right? But they will solve all that. We don't have to solve it. We just have to build a software. Okay. And the software that we are trying to build is somewhat like a Toyota. So if you understand Toyota, because they pioneered this model, where 80% of a Toyota, wherever it's driven in the world, is common, right? Then it is customized. You drive on the left, you drive on the right, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So we cannot build a piece of software which can be used for anything, anywhere without customization. That's like pretty hard. Okay. But we can do 80% of the work. Okay. So that whoever uses this piece of software, okay, can use it and they can customize it. Then there will be a core team which will keep building the software. Those people who customize it can help improve the software and so on and so forth. So that is a little bit like Bitcoin, like GitHub, like Wikipedia, etc., etc. So that is what the model is, right? So is it clear what we are trying to build? Balakrishna, you are the leader. So are you clear?
Yes, I'm pretty much clear about it, sir.
Yeah, because this kind of goes to the discussions you were having with Gunesh and all that.
Yeah.
And you should continue having those, right? But this clarity has to be there, that what we are doing is a very small but a very important piece of the puzzle.
Correct.
Okay. Right? Okay. So what Gpos will do and what it will not do is pretty important to understand, right? And so what I'm saying, so after this meeting, Balakrishna, you can make a small document, right? Which, of course, the video is there, so people can see the video, but a small document of what are the key takeaways from this, both from a product side and from a technical side. We'll get into the technical discussion. I don't know, we'll poll around whether we have some technical people here or are they all product people, whatever, I don't know that. But we'll see, okay, later on, right? Because just now, see, so another belief that I have is that if you're going to be a good technical person also, then having a general idea of the business is very important. So just as you have a technical architect or like a CTO, right? So there's a difference between a CTO and a VP engineering, right? Because a CTO does the architecture, a VP engineering kind of delivers that architecture, right? So these things, so similarly, a business architect builds the architecture for the business, while product managers and all can deliver that architecture. Okay. So our first task and the first deliverable, and we're going to put all this in the public domain, right? So that people can contribute, right? And some people say, hey, this thing that you're doing is really bad, right? Why don't you do this? Whatever. So we can listen, right? But we can't get necessarily diverted because there may be 1,000 voices, right? But only 2 or 3 of those voices may be good, right? So that's how this whole thing will work. Okay. So with this sort of introduction of what we are trying to do, okay, I think we'll move on to what are the main components of Gpos, which are there in my mind at least, right? They can change, right? Which is why I gave you all this background of what we are trying to do, etc., right? So before I go into that, I think to make this tangible, okay, and to also test out the software, one of the work streams which we'll need to have is creating a hypothetical user, right? This is not a real user. This is a dummy user, okay? So we will say, so who can use this Gpos software, according to me? Now, there may be some things that I have not thought of, but to me, the biggest people who can use this, and we'll also come to the revenue model of Gpos, okay, is consulting companies, right? Those who consult with the government or with other companies or whatever. So consulting companies. So people like McKinsey, Accenture, Bain. So these are the big guys. But small guys can also use it, right? Who want to become big, who want to disrupt consulting, right? So, I have used many consultants in my career, right? And they're very smart people, very good people. They make very good presentations, very good things. But generally speaking, I don't think that the consulting profession is as good as it could be. And it is ripe for disruption, right? So if there is a consulting company which wants to be disruptive, right, and make money in a different way meaning, yes, you will pay me a retainer for my services, but I will also have variable fees based on outcomes. So if I don't deliver outcomes, I will not get those fees, right? So to me, that is a better consulting model, right? So one thing we can ask ourselves is, that if I was a consulting company anywhere in the world, big or small, could I use Gpos that we are building to help maybe a part of my consulting practice to become a better consultant and get more market share of consulting revenue in the world and become a big consultant and also deliver impact, right? Okay. So any questions on this? Because this is fairly important, right? So one user set we are talking about are potentially consulting companies who want to build a new model of consulting.
Again, I have one question, sir. So for these big companies, they have their SRS, like service, like society and religion services thing. Under that group, they will solve that society part and underprivileged kids or whatever they are. So are we targeting those part, or this is a new business thing that this consulting company wants?
Okay, so let me, so one of the things is that anyone who's, interested in my thinking kind of thing, you should sort of connect with me on LinkedIn because I post on LinkedIn, right? So, I may post some rubbish, but I may also post some good stuff, whatever it is. So you can follow my thoughts there. But if you see some of my posts, they are about the UP government wanting to appoint a consultant to take them from 230 billion GDP to 1 trillion GDP in 5 years. And that is an immensely high GDP growth rate, right? Now, I have seen some of the decks that people have put together for trying to bid for this. I don't see any mention of changing mindsets of people, which to me is one of the biggest things, right? Because if you want to make every household in UP, grow its GDP, then the youth in UP have to work and they have to add more value, right? If you are doing marginal farming and you're adding more and more people to that marginal farm, you're producing no value, right? If you are doing religious festivals, or you're participating in protest march, or you're doing all this as a youth, and that's your full-time occupation, right? Then you're adding no value, right? So how do you convince people that, hey, actually working in a factory is a good thing? Whether you are a boy or a girl, working 3 shifts is okay. I mean, as you rotate shifts and all those kind of things. So if you have a 24/7 workforce, okay, which is paid, say, let's say $100 a month, right? Now in China, they're now being paid about $300, $400 a month. Okay, in Bangladesh, they're probably being paid about the same, $100. In Switzerland, they're being paid $800, right? So you have this arbitrage opportunity. But if your worker is not productive, right? I may pay $100, but I only get 20% of the work. Then my cost is much more, right? So how do you kind of change the education system, remove social stigmas, change mindsets? All these things are pretty important, So what I'm saying is that a lot of the stuff, and that's why I'm not, see, if you look at the history of PayPal, okay. Now PayPal was disruptive. It changed payments. Now, why couldn't Citibank change payments? I used to work with Citibank, actually. I went to Citibank and gave them the idea of PayPal, which was discussed at the board level. I was reasonably senior in Citibank, okay? And the board loved the idea because it was a good idea, but they didn't know how to do it, right? So a lot of the big companies, they suffer from this bigness problem, right? So they will talk nice things like society, religion, whatever, responsible, blah, 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 and whatever, but they'll do nothing really, right? Because they have become big by being part of the status quo, right? When you have become big by being part of the system, why would you want to change the system? Right? So most likely the disruption comes from smaller people. Right? So now if I was able to go to a state or a district anywhere and to a chief minister, and I was a young consulting company with like good credentials, blah, 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 and I was trying to say that I've got a very different model where my retainer is going to be fairly low, but we'll have success. And then we're going to be pulling people from all around the world to join this platform, so we will be able to deliver far better outcomes than your traditional consultant, right? So one of the things which will help design a really great Gpos is going to be saying, how will it be used? Right? So one of the potential users is consulting companies, right? So let's move on from that unless there are any questions. Okay, the second set of people who can use this are universities. Okay, so let's take again concrete example. So I was in IIT Mumbai, and then I was in IIM Ahmedabad. So I'll take the example of these two universities, but it could be, and I'm not very hopeful that these two universities will do anything, but it may be a small university somewhere else who will set up GPLs. Now, why will they set up GPLs using Gpos? So let's take IIT Mumbai. Okay, so they have professors, right? They have students, right? They have alumni. Okay, and to some extent, their charter says that you must help create people who will help India, whatever. So there is this sort of unwritten mission that they want to help India. Right? Now, if they say that we will set up a GPL, okay, so one, we will get consulting opportunities. So it doesn't have to be a consulting company. So some of the people who have applied for this consulting project are universities in UP, right? So if these universities basically set up a thing where they have thought leaders, okay, from anywhere around the world, they could ask the alumni, they could ask other people to become thought leaders. There could be mentors, okay? Now, there could be celebrities, okay? And there could be some sponsors of content, okay, in this whole GPL thing. Now, if they say that if you have a great idea, which is an impact idea, okay, then you can apply to this incubator, right? So this GPL will also have a portion as an incubator. But it will only be an incubator for world-class entrepreneurs who can build trillion-dollar companies, potentially. Right? So I can solve poverty in the world. I can dramatically improve healthcare outcomes. Whatever, right? Something amazing. I can create jobs for all. Okay. So now, if these people submit a business plan, okay, then the mentors can give them 1 crore. Not the university, but the mentors can give them 1 crore and get 7% of the company. So there is a model already which exists in the world. So there's a thing called Village Global VC. So all of you are interested in this should go and see Village Global VC, their website. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen for a minute and we will go to this thing. Okay, so you can see the URL here, Village Global VC, right? Okay, so Village Global is an early stage venture capital firm backed by some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. So you have Bill Gates, Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Diane Green, Reid Hoffman, whatever, Sarah Blakely or whatever. Meet the rest of the network and investing and all that. So you can look at this, right? So if anyone is asking, what is it that we are building in Gpos, right? This is a good example of what one part of Gpos will do, right? So anyone who wants to set up this equivalent of a Village Global, whether you're a university or you're a consulting firm, you can set that up, right? So the model here is that if you get accepted by Village Global, you will get $150,000, which is approximately 1 crore, and you will give 7% of your company. Right? Now here, if you give 7% of your company, 6% can be retained by the mentors and 1% can be given to the university. Right? So the university put no money, but it got 1% of a company that could potentially become $1 trillion company. Now, it may not become $1 trillion, may become only $1 billion, whatever it is, right? But, or it may fail. But shouldn't a university be encouraging this? What does it have to lose? Right? So, this is another thing that is worth thinking about. Now, the university, therefore, can get revenue by setting up a GPEL, by doing consulting in a different way. Okay. Secondly, they can get revenue from these unicorn plus builders that we are talking about, right? And thirdly, if they want, they can get revenue from the platform users, which we'll talk about, right? So there are potentially 3 revenue sources for any person who sets up a GPL, okay, using the Gpos that we are going to build. Now, can they set this up without using the Gpos that we are going to build? Of course, right? They don't have to use the Gpos, right? Because they may say, hey, we don't want to bother with this open source type of stuff. These guys are, we are these whiz technology people, we'll build our own platform, right? Which is fine, right? But for some people, it will become easier. And if we have that test case, right, we build a financial model for, let's call it Better World Consulting, okay, right? So we create this dummy set of users, this, that, and the other, some dummy stuff. That will also help us test the platform and build a demo, right? And then you can, if you're doing an actual thing, you can just customize this. Okay, got it? So does that seem like an exciting plan to work on? Right?
Yes, yes, definitely.
So any questions on this so far? Or we'll move ahead to the next one. Now, what I want to show you in this is another site.
Sir, can I interject if you don't mind?
Sure, please.
So we discussed on multiple things. So, I mean, in terms of development of software, like should we focus on one aspect first, or you want to develop the whole product first and then look at the use cases separately? Because like you mentioned, the users can be individuals, it can be the IITs, IIMs, or even the governments, right? So in terms of the overall look of the software or the usability, so are you planning to develop the whole thing upfront, or start with the small components, test it out, and then build as we get feedback?
Okay, good question. So how many of you here have heard the term MVP? Okay, Balakrishna, what is MVP?
Is basically minimum viable product that we
Minimum
can
viable product.
show and
Right. So what we want to do is we want to build a minimum viable product, which we have to define. What do we mean by the minimum viable product in this case? Okay. So that is one part, right? That, we want to be able, and there we can say that, okay, I'm only going to build this part of the platform in the minimum viable product. I'm not going to build this part. I'm not going to build this part. And then we can release it, right? And then we can keep doing that. So that's one part, right? Now, one of the things that we've done is, which was another technique we used very effectively in the early days of PayPal, which is 20 odd years ago, right? So now things are much better, right? Hopefully. But one of the techniques we used was, we said that the release date is sacrosanct, right? So we may cut back on the amount of functionality we're going to release, but we are going to release, right? And at that time, we were following a cadence of a monthly release. Right now, I was talking to someone and they say, now the software has improved so much that you can follow a cadence of like 20 releases in a day if you want, right? So, I don't know this. I mean, to me, that's a little bit of a foreign world. But the concept of a minimum viable product is something that we have to define, and that is what we do. The second part of your question, Sapnil, was how are we going to do this? Are we going to do this sequentially, or we are going to do it in parallel, right? Now, the other learning that I've had from long back is that we are going to do things in parallel, not sequentially, right? So it's like this, that if you do a PERT chart, right, or a Gantt chart or whatever you want to do, like you're building a house. Now, you can't do certain things before certain things are done, right? But there are many things that you can do, right? So there's this concept of an early start date and an activity, and then what comes on the critical path and all those kind of things. So you have to keep asking a question saying, hey, this better world consulting that I talked about, okay, can we think about building this test case, use cases, blah, 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 and everything, without the software being ready? Of course we can, right? And that is going to actually feed into making the software better. Because if I tell my developers that, hey, this is how I'm going to test your software, then it helps them build that, right? And the whole speed is much faster, right, in terms of getting a good product launched, right? So anyway, so hopefully that answered your question. So let's move on to the other side that I wanted to show you, okay, which was this is the Starlink website, right? Now, if you look at the Starlink website, you will see how simple it is. So it is saying order Starlink, high-speed, low-latency broadband internet in remote and rural locations across the globe. $110 per month with a one-time hardware cost of $599. Now, if we build Gpos, one of the things we'll have to think about before we launch is how are we going to license this, right? Because even in open source software, there's a license. So it's called a GNU license or something like that, and it has some terms and conditions. And maybe we want to reward the people who built the open source software and also will continue building it, right? So we may say that you can use this for free. But if your revenues exceed $1 million in a year, then the excess over $1 million, okay, 2% of that will need to be paid to some entity which is controlling this Gpos software or whatever, right? And that entity may distribute that to the developers who contributed, right? So whether that is done or not is a separate question. But I mean, that's the way of thinking, right? Now, when we are saying, okay, we are going to build a front end for Gpos, right? Can we think of a front end somewhat similar to Starlink, or there may be some better this thing. So if you go down, it says, so it has some of the features like high speed, low latency, easy to set up, ideal for rural and remote communities, preserving the night sky, keeping space clean, engineered by SpaceX, and view open positions, right? So that's about it. Then it has a map here, which shows you where Starlink is available and where it's not available, where it's coming soon across the globe, right? Then it has here things like for business, okay, there is a double the antenna capacity and the pricing is different, okay. Then it has for recreational vehicles, RV, has something, right? Then it has for support, if you want support, right? And then the various resources of like how they're going to keep space clean and all this kind of stuff. But the interesting part is this. So this is US in English, right? So they are in so many countries, right? So this is Germany in German. So now the whole website is in German. Okay, I don't understand German, but it's there. Now there's so little verbiage and everything, right? But it's so everything now this thing and all that, and it's all there in German. Okay, now you go there here and you change it, okay, and go back to, but you can go into Espanol, Portuguese, Italian, okay, Polski, whatever Polski is, some Polish language, France, Italian, English, etc., right? So, so given that we are trying to develop something which is going to be global, can we do this, right? So from the technical thing, this could be quite challenging, right? Because we want to support every single Indian dialect, right? Which is available on Google Translate. Okay. We want to support foreign languages, right? So now I don't know if this is technically possible, but my brief to the technical team would be, hey, I want to support every language which is there in Google Translate. And as the languages come in, I want to be able to support them. Right? Okay. Then, if you look at how the Amazon application is built, right? Now, the Amazon app works on Android, works on iOS, etc. What someone was telling me, I don't know if this is true, is it's built in such a way that it doesn't use iOS or Android, the store kind of thing. It's built in some web something 3.0, whatever, I don't know, right? Wherein it kind of works like natively, but it will support every damn thing, right? So now in the technical thing, does it fit into the MVP? Does it not fit into the MVP? I don't know, right? But ideally, I would want something which will work on any operating system. So it will be device agnostic. It will be language agnostic, right? So now you're getting a sense of what is it that we can aspire to build. Then we may have to scale it back, right? Saying what can we build in the MVP, right? Now, one of the things we should not fear is that there's a saying in startups that if you are not embarrassed by your first release, okay, then you left it too late, right? Okay, so we have to say, we wanted to see, because just now, if I ask anyone, you may have read everything that I've written, blah, 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 whatever. And even in my own head, right? What is this Gpos, right? I don't know. But now if we put this together and then someone say, yeah, you like say iPhone, the first version, now you're on iPhone 14. I mean, like obviously iPhone 14 is better than iPhone 1. Right? But the thing is that now you know what an iPhone is, right? With the iPhone 1. Then you can keep improving it. Right? So what we want to do is we want to build a Gpos 1. Right? Then it can keep improving. Okay. So with this, I'm more or less complete with the high level stuff. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing this. You can look at this Village Global, Starlink, look at other things and all those kind of things. Because one of the fundamental things when at least I try to build something is I don't try to reinvent the wheel. I just try to find out where there are nice things which I can use. Okay. But I don't blindly copy. So I don't do cut and paste. Right? I want to apply my mind to the stuff that is there to build something nice. Okay. Okay. So since, so we've been running for an hour, right? And so on. So it was a good time to pause a little bit and just if there are any questions, things like that, we can do it. Because now I'm going to move to the next phase, okay, which is trying to move from 100,000 feet to 10,000 feet. So sharp descent, right, in there, okay. So before I do that, any questions, any comments?
Sir, have the company been formed already?
No. So the first thing is that Gpos is not a company.
Okay.
People who are building the software, this is just a group of volunteers, right? So there is no corporate structure, right? Now, whether there should be a corporate structure or not is something that we'll come to at a later point, right? And that will need a little bit of research. Maybe we'll get some volunteer legal people, et cetera, to research that and see what is the thing. But right now, we don't need a company, right? Because what I have said is that we don't need money because nobody is getting paid to build this. No one is getting paid to build the software. They're all volunteering, right? Now, if there are some small incidental expenses, okay, that are there, like we need to get a domain name or, some other little thing here and there, whatever, then we can do it. So I don't know what that is, but I had put in my post that saying if those costs are less than $1,000, I'm willing to pay that, right? But everywhere we have to think that why should we pay, right? So if we want to host this, this is another technical question, right? So now if I'm saying that I am a user who uses AWS, okay, I'm a user who uses Azure, I'm a user who uses Google Cloud Platform. Now this piece of software that I'm building, is it agnostic to which cloud provider I use, right? So if it can be built that way, great, right?
Sir, actually, a good point you made about the cloud, right? So because I work with startups, right, and with Microsoft Azure, they give you free credits as well. And I think the same applies for AWS as well. And if you are a startup or an organization which is trying to create a social impact, right, they can even extend the credits as well. So I think we're well covered in that. The reason I was talking about that point was when we start earning money, right, that time we'll need to do auditing and everything will be there.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
how are we going to manage that aspect? Because
No, so
and also,
yeah.
sorry, sir, sorry. Also, GPL, when I just Google it, I don't see any website. And maybe we need to start getting some eyeballs so that people start understanding what these guys are doing, just like creating some kind of brand recall for ourselves.
No. So there are two separate parts, right? So Gpos is one part. And so think of Gpos as a open source software and GPL as multiple instances of using that software, which could be anywhere in the world, right? Now, none of us, while some of the people who are in this, but not me, may get associated with GPLs around the world as they're set up in some sort of commercial capacity. I will get associated maybe with a few GPLs in a thought leader capacity where I make no money. Okay. There is already, like Balakrishna has sent this link. There is a company in Mumbai called Sapio Analytics or something, where the CEO had contacted me and he wanted to set up a Sapio GPL, which already exists. So you can see, I can share the screen here again. So this is the why is this not coming out?
I think the site is working slowly. Even in my computer also it's opening very slow.
So maybe, whatever. So while this is a private limited company, it has been set up, etc. They haven't really put a lot of resources behind it as yet, right? So that actually led me to also this thing of saying that it would become much easier for people to set up GPLs if the software part. So because if you look at this website, it is just a website in WordPress and it doesn't have much functionality, right? And if they were to invest money in building the software, right, then they may want to build a proprietary software, right? But if there is a Gpos software, which is open source, then the work for like a Sapio GPL becomes less, right? So Swapnil, the thing is that Sapio GPLs may be set up like by many different kind of legal entities, institutions, etc., etc. Aside from the universities and the consulting firms, there could be some VC firms, okay, who also want to set up GPLs, right, as a disruptive form of VC. It's possible, right? So the Sequoias of the world or small VC firms, etc., would also set up, right? So leave that aside, right? So, and all those kind of things. And we'll come to how, this stuff can be used and what are some of the challenges. But as far as Gpos itself is concerned, for very long, it will not earn any revenue, right? Because people will volunteer, somebody will keep track of how much volunteering hours they've done or whatever, right? Like, so if they earn revenue, there's some method of distributing it, right? So that could be done, but that's the only. Then how this will be incorporated, what will be the terms of the license, etc., etc. people can use it. And maybe we will use an honor system, right? Wherein the thing is, why should we have very complicated legal contracts, etc., etc.? If we can have a simple honor system, right? In that. So, because most of the people who will get associated with this are going to get associated with this because of passion and belief. Right? Now, what are the gains that they could get by getting associated with this? Let's spend a little bit of time before that, because, yeah, I forgot about that, which is very important, right? So basically, the thing is that when you're working with this kind of problem, both on the product side and on the technical side, and you're building an open source software which can be used around the world, it's a very interesting and challenging project. And everyone who works on it will learn a lot, which could be very useful for them in whatever they're doing, on the product side as well as on the technical side. Right? Because we talked about this multilingual, we looked at Starling, we looked at BC Global, etc., right? So it's this mind thing of saying, okay, how do I build this? Right? And when you participate in that, so you might have seen one of these posts where I put in this thing of saying that I'm looking for 2 people who want to kind of apprentice with me in a way, right? For doing the architecture for this Gpos, right? And that I would interact with them for 1 hour. But how do I select these people, right? So my example is that I possibly could be a good coach. I could transfer some of my knowledge to these people. And I'm not particular that they have to be from India. They can be from anywhere in the world. I just want to transfer my knowledge, if people believe I have some knowledge, to some 2 people who are, right, rock stars. Okay. So it's like Sachin Tendulkar at an early age. He had a coach who was this Achrekar or somebody, right? But Achrekar selected Sachin because he saw something in him. And Sachin was prepared to work very hard. Right? So therefore, if you look at that thing of how I've asked people to apply, right, it's very tough to apply. Okay. But if somebody has that talent, right, and the passion and they believe, then they may apply. So I may coach no one. Okay. Or I might coach a few people. But in the meanwhile, we can move ahead, right? So some of the people after this who are from a product kind of framework and they want to work with me on the product, in creating a document, okay, they can do that, right? So but then I'm going to ask them to write the stuff. Okay. And then we'll have a separate kind of session like this, which will improve that. Right? Because otherwise, everybody loves to listen to me talk. But when it comes to doing stuff, by putting something down, spending time, then everybody backs off. Right? And this is not my project. I'm just the coach. I don't care if this project dies. Okay? I've not taken a contract to make a better world or something. Right? I just want to make a better world if other people want to do it. Right? If there's nobody who wants to do it, fine. I'll enjoy myself. So I'm very clear about that, right? So that is the thing. So one part of why people will benefit is that if they work hard, let's say you're doing a pretty busy job, but you've been doing it for a while, you're quite good at doing it. So maybe you spend 40 hours a week on your job, right? And you don't need to spend more, you're fine. Now you have some free time. Now you could use that free time for work-life balance, whatever it is, your hobby. But if your hobby is making a better world, then you can spend 20 hours doing that. That's your hobby, right? So because you get great joy out of it, right? I'm looking for people like that. And maybe you can't do 20, maybe you can do 5, right? But those 5, if you do it really well, okay, you can learn a lot. And this passion for learning is very, very important. At least for me, I have been a constant learner. I'm still learning. Okay, so that is one. So whatever you learn from here could help you in your career, whatever you do, right? You may end up doing one of these unicorn startups or being part of one. You may end up joining a GPL if a GPL is set up. Okay, who knows what will happen, right? So the basic thing is that anyone who thinks that they are just volunteering because of the goodness of their heart, whatever, I'm saying no, because you could really benefit by volunteering yourself, right? So is this clear? Whether you're a product person or you're a technical person. Okay, so let's move on from this high-level philosophical stuff to brass tacks. Okay, like what are we going to do? Okay, so the first and most important part of this platform, Gpos, is that we want millions of people from around the world to join this platform as individuals. Okay, now they could be from, let's say, the age of 16 or maybe even younger, okay, to the age of 100, maybe, whatever, right, till they die, right? So anybody from any country, any gender, you could be transgender, you can join, doesn't matter, right? Okay, so especially if you have a vote anywhere in the world, you can join. Even if you do not have a vote anywhere, which I'd like say maybe you're in a country which doesn't have voting, okay, you can join. You could be a politician, you could be a judge, you could be Prime Minister Modi, you could be Putin, you could be Vladimir Zelensky or whoever, right? You can join. You can be a professor, you can be a bureaucrat, you can be a regulator, you can just be Aam Aadmi. You can join, right? So the thing is, now why would you join, right? Yes, you can join, no problem, right? But why will you join? Okay, so basically you will join because you want a better world. You will join because this helps you make a better world, right? So one of the questions we have to keep asking ourselves, we don't have to give all the answers today, but we have to keep asking ourselves is, why as an individual, why will I join this platform? What is in it for me? Okay, if it helps me elect better leaders, yeah, sure, that's a good reason to join. Will it help me improve my own prosperity? Okay, both material, health, and mind, then that's a great reason to join, right? Because if I believe that making the world prosperous starts with making me prosperous, okay, better prosperity, then I would have a strong reason to join the platform. Third, if it helps me get my voice heard, either by my submitting ideas or upvoting ideas that others may have submitted, that's a great reason to join. Okay. If I'm a leader, like I'm a chief minister, I'm a prime minister, okay, I want to get help from the best minds in the world to make my state or my country better. That may be a great reason to join. Now, there are also lots of competing platforms. Like, for instance, Prime Minister Modi has his own platform, right? But could this platform be something unfiltered, something, could it be useful? Maybe. So like this, we have to see that how do we design this kernel or this part of the platform which makes sign-on into this thing very easy, okay? Prevents duplication, right? Like I don't want the same person to have 50 different identities on this platform, because there's double role and triple role, Ram or Sham and all this kind of stuff is okay in movies, but we don't want it on this platform. We want only one person, right? So, because if this platform is going to say that, look, in this district, in this constituency, I have 20,000 people who are on this platform, okay, who want to elect good leaders, then the politicians who want to stand to get elected will say, ye to fake bots vagara hai, ye kuch, what is this? So, see, now that we know that Twitter is suffering from bots problem, we don't want bots in this platform, right? So how do we prevent that? How do we have people, how do we say, and so in the minimal viable product set, it could be saying that, look, if you are anyone, anywhere in the world, any capacity, you can join, right? But then there is a separate category of what we can call a verified user, okay, who, you put your Aadhaar card, you select which polling booth, etc., you're a voter in, right? Maybe you don't need to put your voter ID card or anything. Maybe this platform does not retain any information, right? It just uses your Aadhaar card to do an OTP verification, and that's the end of it, right? Because we can get very paranoid about how to make this platform bulletproof, but we can then add a lot of overhead for the user. And why will the user do all this? So we have to make it like reasonable, right? Because what is the incentive that this person gains by having, say, 50 identities on this platform? If there's nothing much that the person gains, then they won't do it. But if there's a lot that they gain, then they will do it, right? So we have to keep asking ourselves this question, because let's say there's some article or something which is voted up, right? Now that could be by fake bots or by real people. Now, if that article gets voted up, if it is only seen by an editorial team, which is a bunch of humans, who will make the ultimate decision? Then what do I get by doing fake bots and voting this thing up? Nothing. All right. So this is one part of this thing which we have to see. Now, when a person joins, if they select their polling booth and constituency, okay, then I want to be able to display very nicely that we have so many people in this constituency and so on, right? Because later, if I say that, say, in India in 2024, when the elections come for MP, right? So there may be various levels, like, so you are MP, then you have district, then you have MLA, Zilla Parishad, whatever. So our Gpos platform may say that you can have layers, right? Like there's one layer at the country level, then there's the next layer at a parliamentary constituency level, then there's the next layer at a MLA level, then whatever. So those kind of levels, etc., can be built, and then they can be populated. So we can assume that this Better World Consulting is an Indian company, right? So, and we are doing all this in the mock data for India, right? So this is an example of how this platform could be used to elect better leaders, because then you could say that these leaders, and this may not be part of the GPL, but there could be a separate company which builds this whole election platform, where the leaders basically say that, okay, these are so many people who are interested in knowing what is my plan for this constituency that I'm standing in. Okay. And then these people say, okay, we will fund your campaign. We will vote for you if we like your plan. Okay. So that's one part. Now, when you come to your own prosperity, right? Suppose there's content, and we don't have to build the content. We just have to build the places where the content can be populated, right? So if there's content on boosting your material wealth, if there's content on boosting your mind wealth, there's content on boosting your health wealth or whatever, right? Now people can get the content. That content could be sponsored by celebrities. It could be podcasts. It could be TikToks. It could be whatever it is, right? In terms of that kind of stuff, right? So that is that part. Then, so one of the things that we have to think about is, once I become a user, I register on this platform, what kind of communications will I get? What is it that I can do on this platform? Right? Because otherwise I just join this platform, then what? After that, what do I do? Right? Nothing. Right? So that is what you have to think of in the design. Right? Now, see, Balakrishna, you are listening to this, right? So I'm telling you that how we designed in PayPal. So there was a guy called Colin who was the technical guy, and then there was Elon, and there was me, right? We used to have these kind of discussions. Now, Colin will not wait for a spec from me. I'm the product guy, right? He's saying, okay, I asked him, now I have to write this big spec. He said, what? I said, I used to be in Citibank. Right? Then I have to write this spec. Then it's got to be approved by hundreds of people. Then I'll give you the spec. Then you'll start building it. He said, no, this is nonsense. We are a startup, right? So what we are going to do is, you've told me, I'm going to start building, right? And you keep telling me whatever it is, and you keep documenting and all, but I'm building, right? And then when you tell me something, I may have to change what I'm building. That's okay. I'll change it. I'm agile. Now there's this term agile. We didn't have all this agile term and all earlier, right? Okay. But this was what agile was. So this is what will be the mode, right? So now if you're seeing here, what are the things that will attract an individual to join, right? Now, if you suppose we have a business model where if you refer people to join, then you get certain number of points, right? So there's some leaderboard, etc., etc. And let's say that the first 100,000 users will be free for life. The rest of the users will have to pay $1 per year to join. Right? Now, this is the revenue for GPLs. Okay. But 80% of that revenue for the GPLs may be reimbursed to the first 100,000 users. and 20% may be retained by the GPL. So now it's creating an incentive for the 100,000 people to join and propagate it. Right? Okay, so I think we have enough juice in my mind for our technical geniuses to start thinking about all this stuff and to start building something. Right? In the meanwhile, the product people who want to work with me, okay, can start documenting some of the stuff in a little more detail so that we don't lose it. Okay. So theoretically, a GPL in India could have 5 to 10 million users. Right? Now forget the 100,000, but let's say you have 10 million users. Then what is your revenue per year? $10 million from the platform. Right? Now, what is the amount you will be paying to the 100,000 first users? $800,000. Right? So if all the 100,000 were equal, which they won't be, but if they were, they would get $8. No, sorry, 8 million, right? So they would get $80 per year for doing nothing except promoting it and being an early adopter. Right? Now, if there was a GPL in India which became global, okay, could it have 100 million users? Okay. So this is the way of thinking, right? Of how people in Silicon Valley think. Now they may fail. They'll say, "Yaar, kahan se 100 million?" You know, but whatever. I mean, you never know till you try, right? Okay. And of course, it's going to take, so you're also going to have competition. You're not going to be the only GPL in the world, right? So, right. But as for Gpos, we are just creating the software, right? Now, for the Gpos people, let's say there are 1,000 people in the core team, and it will not be equally distributed, but whatever it is, right? And these GPLs from all over the world are making more than this $1 million and they're paying 2% or whatever, then there'll be a revenue model here. So the people who contributed could be earning a fair amount of money if that was what they joined for, right? And if it was successful. Okay. So this is one part of the platform, which in my mind is one of the most important parts of the platform. The second part of the platform is the research part of the platform, right? Various ideas. So people can submit ideas, they can be upvoted. Then there could be, so it's like Harvard Business Review. You want to submit an article to Harvard Business Review, right? So now you can submit these articles. They get upvoted, then an editorial team reviews it. The editorial team translates it into multiple languages, makes TikTok versions of it. You can see the basic thing, you know, and, you know, it sort of helps the world become better. So that's the research part of it, right? Then there is the unicorn plus part of it, of the platform. So you are a great entrepreneur, you have an idea, you have a team, you've built a prototype, you want to apply, right? So you look at the Village Global application process. Okay, that can be adapted and that becomes another part of the platform, right? Then there is another very big part of the platform which we have not talked about till yet. And to me, that is the most exciting part of the platform. So that is this concept of a district as a lab. So now let's say there's a district anywhere in the world, okay, which wants to become one of the best districts in the world, right? And what do you mean by best district in the world? You can define the metrics, right? Like, but let's say it's jobs for all. It's pretty good on all the sustainability parameters, these SDGs as they're called. Then it's good on GDP, etc., right? So whatever the parameters are. Now, how can you be the best district in the world? Is by making your district like a laboratory, district as a lab. Okay. Now, India has a unique advantage because they have 750 districts. So there's a lot of diversity in the districts. And each district is like a small country because it has over 1 million people, right? Now, let's take a concrete example. So I keep talking about this cheap, responsible use of credit, right? RBI is also talking about some digital lending mechanism or something, right? Now, if I came up with a very disruptive idea of how I can make credit cheap and responsible and so on and so forth, and I want to pilot this idea in a district, and the district says, I'm going to be enabling. I'm going to help you, right? Because I like your idea, you're going to solve poverty. Okay. So what can the district do to be enabling? Okay. It says, fine, I will, like Jandhan, I will promote, I will use all the government machinery to promote usage of your product. Okay. So instead of Paytm spending millions of dollars on trying to acquire customers, right? My customer acquisition cost may become close to zero. Right? The other thing that's there is saying that if you're worried about regulations, I will work with SEBI, I'll work with RIDA, tax authorities, this, that, the other. I will make your job of dealing with regulations very easy. Right? This is a huge benefit for world-class entrepreneurs, right? And a differentiator. That's why they may come. So I'm going to be talking on Friday on Surat, right? Because Surat has this thing about wanting to be a global startup hub. So I'm going to say, okay, why Surat? Okay, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Why should world-class entrepreneurs come to Surat? Right? So this thing, if your district as a lab, could be a very useful thing. Okay, in terms of this kind of stuff, right? So these are essentially the 4 components of this platform. Now, in the MVP, we do not need to build all these 4 components, right? So this district as a lab, so some of the things that which districts have signed up to be labs, who's working where, right? So the districts would probably be open to sharing their solutions so that other districts can be better, etc., etc. So if you are a district, there may be some place that you go to look at what is happening in other districts around the world. What are best practices? So for instance, like the city of Mumbai, where I am, also part of a district, right? Now, at some point in time, Mumbai city probably wants to have water which comes out of the tap everywhere in the district to be drinkable, right? So I don't need an RO, whether I'm living in Dharavi or I'm living in, say, this condominium or wherever. I have water, which is drinkable. Okay. Now, this may seem like impossible, but hey, there are so many cities in the world which have that. So why can't Mumbai have it? Right? Now, when it says, okay, I have a challenge in my district, I want world-class entrepreneurs to come and solve this problem. And by the way, you have to have at least 100 crores in capital. You have to have a new co which is going to solve this. I want to spend the least amount of public money to do this, but you will have to help me with the fundraising, etc., etc. Okay. But if you come here and you solve this and you give us a plan and you select it, then you can use this as a lab and you can do it in all the cities in India and then maybe cities around the world. Right? So this is in an urban context. Now, in a rural context, it could be solving like poverty or increasing the GDP and things like that. Right? So these are the basic contours of what we want to try and do. Okay. So I'm pretty much done with speaking. If there are some questions, I can answer them. But now let's get on to concrete next steps. What are we going to do? Right. So one is that I will want some people on the product side to volunteer to put together a document which can be used by the technical side to build the MVP of Gpos. Right? They will work with me. Okay. Balakrishna, you have to figure out by talking to all your technical people, you may get some co-leads with you, etc., right? Whatever structure you put in place, because here there are a few challenges, okay, on the technical side, which at least I can think of. You may be able to think of more, right? The product side, there are challenges, but they are, I mean, I know how to solve them. I don't know how to solve the technical side challenges. Because here, what you're saying is that, it has to be broken up into bite-sized tasks of what needs to be built, what languages are going to be used, etc., etc. How is it going to be put into whatever containers, whatever not, and then how is this whole thing going to get assembled, and how is it scalable in the future, and blah blah blah, right? So those things you can start worrying about, and you should start building. Don't wait for this stuff. Okay. And once I get the people so I'm thinking that I will probably have the first product meeting sometime on Wednesday, maybe from say 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. On Wednesday, from whoever wants to volunteer for the product side. And I want to make it clear to those people who are volunteering is you will have to do work. You're not coming here to just listen to me, right? In there. So, and we probably have a shorter meeting because we don't need such a long meeting in the initial part, maybe half an hour. And then we can, once people do some work, then we can have longer meetings, right? And they can coordinate among themselves without me. Right, and produce a document. So that's the game plan on the product side. Now, the benefit of that is that they can question my thinking, maybe come up with something better. Okay. So I will share some of the things that I have on the product side in a little more detail with them. And then they can come up with concrete deliverables on the product side. And then the technical people can say, hey, you missed this part, right? Or whatever, right? We want this, right? And then the technical people should also come up with a deliverable of saying, this is what our technical thing is, and this is the kind of work streams, this is the high level estimate of how long it's going to take, how many hours, etc. And then they can call for more volunteers to speed up the time. Like, so there's a saying that, there are certain things which can't be speeded up, right? So even if you put 100 people on the job, right, a baby will take 9 months, right? You can't accelerate it, right? But on certain other things, you can put more people. So that is going to be the skill of the technical team of how. So there are plenty of people who are willing to volunteer, but like I just got a message from somebody in Brazil who wants to volunteer. I said, yeah, fine. I mean, but I don't know what they're going to do. So there are plenty of people who want to volunteer, right? But you have to tell them what. And then some of the people who volunteer may write stupid code, right? So then that has to be jumped, right? So what are the standards? How will the code be written, etc., etc. is all for the. And some of it, don't worry too much about it, because like I said, the first version is something which is quick and dirty. Okay. And it may be thrown away and improved. Okay. Because sometimes, if you start with like too much, like this thing, I'm going to build the best thing right from day one, then you lose speed. Right. So that's the trade-off. Okay. One last thing I want to show you. So my son and a co-founder, they are building something called Bharosa Club, which I was building some time back. I'm not a very good entrepreneur, but I'm a good thinker. But so they are building this. Now there are just two of them, and they've had an interesting journey. So I'm just going to share that screen also here. Okay, so this is this thing called bharosaclub.com, right? So some of you may like to just explore this and become free members. Then you may want to pay to upgrade, etc. If you use mutual funds or whatever, or somebody who uses mutual funds, you can get them to join this. Now, the reason to do that is like we showed you Starlink and, Village Global VC. Now, this is like an Indian company where there are two people, okay, just two. So they don't have a big burn rate, whatever, who have built this, okay. Now, it's not the greatest, okay. They want to improve it a lot, right? So you will see something which is a work in progress, and you may have lots of ideas about how it could be improved. Now, I'm not asking you to improve Bharosa, right? That's a separate thing. But I'm basically saying that if you were to build something for Gpos, okay, how would you do it in a way where if you spot some bad stuff in Bharosa Club, you will avoid it? The point I'm trying to make is, I'm not saying Bharosa Club is bad. Okay, it's pretty good. But the thing is, it has certain things that can be improved. Okay. So what is it that happens, triggers in your mind, okay, wherein you see things which are not so good? That helps you to build something better. So I'll show you another site, okay, which I kind of use for financial services. So it's called trendline.com, right? For those who do stock trading and stuff like that. Okay. So if you were to look at this site, now there's some very good things about this site. There's certain bad things. I won't bias you by telling you what I consider bad stuff. But except to say that it's very visually challenging. right? So if you see websites and or apps in India, they try to pack so much stuff. They don't understand that the web is like an infinite medium. There's no restriction on number of pages. So you don't have to pack everything into your homepage. You want to peel the onion slowly, right? So I'm just showing you some examples of good and bad and medium. Right? So you can have your own examples of those, but that will help you design. Right? Now, you are also designing for a global audience. Right? Now, you may say, nahin, India mein to they like all this crowded stuff. If you don't have 2-3 things jumping up and down on your homepage, they don't like it. Okay? I don't think that's correct, by the way. Right? I think people are more similar everywhere. They don't want this visual overload. They want simplicity, etc., etc. So we will have to make some design choices, right? And that is where Balakrishna and me are there. We will make the choices, right? In terms of those kind of things. So basically, we are going for simplicity, right? So if you want to find some information which helps you, right? Like let's say you are an individual who says, today I want to see how to improve my mental health, right? So let me go to the site and I'll find something and maybe that'll help me quickly. So that there aren't 10,000 things because that's already there on the web. Right? Like the problem is it's not curated, right? So those are some of the things that you might want to think about. Okay. So we just have 8 minutes left. So maybe we just go around quickly with each person. And I will put my, saying that what were your main takeaways from this? Did you find this discussion useful and all this kind of stuff? So don't take more than a minute. Maybe we'll start with Rupesh and then work to Ritik, Pranjal, Ranjit, Swapnil. Yeah. So Rupesh, you want to get started? Are you there, Rupesh? Okay. I'm not sure Rupesh is there. So we can move on to, oh no, he's there. Oh.
Yeah. Hello, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is my first meeting. So as of now, I'm just absorbing that what is the idea, how things have been thought through and where I can contribute. So currently, not much to say that what exactly. I'm just trying to visualize that what exactly we're trying to achieve and how that can be done.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Ritik, you want to go next?
Yes, sir. So I'm actually good at coding as well, but the thing is the platform which we are trying to design requires Ruby and JavaScript, right? So I am someone who does more C++ and Python. So I guess I would be fit for product volunteering more than technical. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so if you want to volunteer on the product, then just send me a DM on LinkedIn or on the Slack group or whatever, or the WhatsApp group. And then I'll include you on the product side.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Then Pranjal, you want to say?
No, I have not much to say it because I'm not a technical person. But it's a good idea, so we can make it with the help of Balkrishna. I'm starting to learning that soft skill some.
Okay.
So hopefully we can make it.
Okay, fair enough. Ranjit.
Yeah, hi sir.
Hi.
So basically, I'm here just to understand the product and the concepts and all other things. I'm pretty much inclined towards the technical side, but before that, I just want to understand how the product, okay, how it works and other things, the rabbit holes, okay, and the scratch products, and just get from your side your knowledge, okay. So this is my first, like I'm just absorbing all the things, okay. Just I have one question, means like, uh, this is a basic question, okay. So like means, uh, how to generate the idea and how to filter that and how to test it, okay, before going to scale up. So how do we know that that idea would work, okay? It's kind of POC or MVP, you said that. So how are you gonna test that in a market?
So basically, the thing is that, when an idea is abstract, right? Like you can talk about it, and then suppose you're evaluating 5, 10 ideas which are abstract, right? Then you and your co-founder, or if you have a founder, co-founder, etc., or whatever, can talk about it and say, what do we want to work on, right? Then you can test it with friends and family, make a presentation, whatever. Then if it kind of resonates, and see, that is a dangerous thing, because if your idea is far out, most people will tell you that it won't work. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a standard thing. But if you have belief, right? So you're listening to people and you say, I understand it won't work, but why do you say it won't work? Right? So you listen very carefully. And then if you've convinced, then you build a prototype, right? Then, because these days building a prototype is not that hard in most cases, right? So you may not have any real users. You may have dummy users, you can show it, blah, blah, blah. Then it becomes a little more concrete, right? And then if it doesn't resonate, right? And then you may have to accept reality that, hey, it's not a great idea. So that's the whole kind of thing, right? Now, if you see this Gpos, GPL, right? I have a reasonable amount of money. I could do funding and get a whole setup and kind of do this. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do it in a different way, right? So I said, fine. Like if people come, maybe it resonates, maybe it fails, whatever. So we'll see, right? So hopefully that answers your question, right?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, cool. Okay, so who's left? Anyone? Swapnil, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I think overall got the understanding of the concept. Obviously, regarding the product components, how to build it. So I think that needs to be discussed further. So I can definitely bring in my ideas from the product side as well as on the business side as well, because I set up the current company where I was working. So I set up the company there, legal and other things also. I can help out. But yeah, on the product side, happy to get on a call on Wednesday and discuss this further.
Okay, so just send me a DM on LinkedIn so I can also look at your LinkedIn profile and all that kind of stuff. And then just have a half an hour call so that, you and Ritik and maybe anyone else who volunteers, it doesn't matter, right? We'll keep it to just a few people. And you guys can then talk with each other, right? One person can take the lead and prepare a document, right? And then once that document is ready, we'll have a detailed call on trying to improve that document and improve that document. And that is how you will learn.
Sure, sir.
In terms of that, and you will teach me also, right? So it's a two-way street. It's not, I'm only the teacher, right? I'm also the learner, right? Okay. Sure. So that's it. Balakrishna, anything you have to say? After that, we can kind of end the call.
Yeah, I think it's a very thought-provoking session, as always you have given, sir. So I think that's a good new things to learn every time we are on call. So yeah, and maybe we can start the technical things with all the technical guys. Maybe I'll connect them separately, or we can just discuss in group and all. So yeah.
So in the next Sunday meeting, you can brief what's happened on the technical side, how you're building, what your plan is. So basically you can kind of say that if you were presenting to your CEO, which for the moment I'm kind of playing the role of that, then what would you present? What would you tell me? in terms of this. So that would be the agenda for the next Sunday call. In the meanwhile, you can do whatever you want, right? If
Sure.
you need to ping me, ping me. We are working on the product side separately, right? With Ritik and Swapnil and whoever else comes. But, and so we have a plan, right? And we'll move forward. And it's exactly 11 o'clock, so that's good. We can enjoy our weekend. And
one thing I want to add, sir, that currently for technical side, we got all sets of people like the product manager, architect, backend, front end, and all. Right now, we are one volunteer we required is in kind of design and all. Who can do this all the Figma design XD thing that we can start building on.
Yeah. So what you do is that you can always post, right? After you have a discussion and you have a little bit of a thing which is not too long, not too, which generally gives an idea of why this is exciting for a person to volunteer.
Okay.
And what are the gaps where you don't have volunteers, right? And this graphic design may be one of it or whatever it is, right? And then, like I do, you put that document on the drive and then you give a link and then you post it on LinkedIn and then I can share it. Okay, and people will probably come and volunteer like we did before, right? So just follow that same model. Okay. Right.
Thanks a lot.
Anything else? Or we're done, right? So I'm ending the meeting, right? I'm stopping the recording and ending. Okay, and I will post the recording link on the YouTube channel. So I'll post it on LinkedIn. So you guys will have it, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.